It was reported yesterday that the Carolina Hurricanes and Sebastian Aho are nearing a contract extension to keep him in Raleigh long term. We will talk about that and more in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I'm your host, Jared Ellis, and you are listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of this Saturday afternoon. I hope you are enjoying your weekend, folks. And I am joined by my co-host, Andrew Schnittker. How are you doing on this Saturday, Andrew?
I'm doing well. It's good to be back. You know, it's been a little bit with us in the doldrums of the off season here.
Yeah, it has been a minute, and it was reported yesterday by who was it, Andrew?
Tom Galletti, one
Tom
of the
Galletti.
major national like NHL.com has a handful of national writers, and each of them are responsible for a specific region. And I think Tom Galletti is responsible for the I think basically like the East Coast, if I'm not mistaken. And, he's been doing it for a long time. It's kind of, cool to see, in the past that meant lots of articles about teams like the Rangers, the Capitals, the Penguins. Well, now a guy like Tom Galletti, responsible for covering major NHL news in the Eastern region, finds himself writing more and more about the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yes, and that's what we are going to talk about today in this episode because there was a lot to digest from his article. And we're going to start out by the biggest thing of the Hurricanes and Aho getting close to a new contract, extending him long term. That's the big thing that the Hurricanes wanting to do this offseason. We've obviously talked about free agent signings, how they've made splashes there, but we said going into the offseason that getting Aho locked up long term was one of, if not the biggest thing that they needed to take care of this offseason. And it looks like they are getting closer and closer. In that article, Don Waddell said, quote, we're working on it, getting close, not there yet, but we are talking on a regular basis almost daily. So I'm hoping that we can get this to the finish line here in the next week or so. And yeah, that's going to be fantastic, obviously, if they could get him locked up long term in the next week, because he's entering the last season of that 5-year deal that ended up stemming from the Montreal offer sheet stuff. And he did say that that's all water under the bridge. They haven't talked about it since. And yeah, you've kind of figured that was the case with that. But yeah, getting him locked up long term is going to be huge. Waddell ended up saying later on in the article, that wants to be a Hurricane player for life, and he loves what the team and organization has going on here. So really no surprise in that. I would say really the only surprise, I guess, is the fact that it hasn't been done already. But there's going to be a lot. There's a lot of stuff that we couldn't comprehend that goes into this kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you get into this part of the off season. There's really no rush, but I think every indication, like I said, you mentioned the offer sheet. We heard from Tom Dundon. He's not bitter about that. Dom Waddell's not bitter about that. Sebastian Aho is not bitter about that. I mean, it ended up working out for all parties. The deal got a deal that could have taken most of the offseason to get done with an RFA, gets done quickly. Sebastian Aho gets a good deal. It ends up being a good deal for the Hurricanes. I think they would have been willing to pay him more, and probably give him more term at that time. But yeah, I think, you look at this deal, like we said, it's probably going to be, I think 8 by 9.5 has been the kind of the big rumor, the expectation. That's what Braden Point, who's another client of Jerry Johansson, Sebastian Aho's agent, got with the Tampa Bay Lightning. They've had fairly similar production over the last several years. And again, I know we've said this before, but giving Sebastian Aho that $9.5 million cap hit is really not that big a deal for the Hurricanes. He's at like 8.46 now.
Mm-hmm.
So you're really talking about only, a little over $1 million more against your cap on a yearly basis. The cap's expected to rise at least $3 or $4 million next offseason as we finally start to move out of this whole COVID revenue, cap freeze. So I think that's going to work out for the Hurricanes. Timing wise, like you said, there's a lot, that goes into it, a lot of I's and that have to be dotted, T's that have to be crossed. You figure out the yearly cash, like the cap hit's going to be the same, but the yearly cash flow, every year is not going to be the same. They have to sort that out. I'd imagine it's actually going to be a lot more palatable for the Hurricanes in that sense than the offer sheet was, because the big thing with that was the base salary in the offer sheet was actually like either 700, 750, 775,000 every year, with just a big old signing bonus due every July 1, because Montreal thought like, oh, well, Tom Dundon's cheap, he won't want to do that. So obviously that was not the case. That was a false assumption on their part, but I'm sure Tom Dundon will probably be happier to spread out Sebastian Aho's paychecks throughout the year and not have to sign a great big check every July 1. So I can see that. Timing wise, this is the kind of thing, Dom Waddell's been busy. The Hurricanes obviously, had other unrestricted free agents this year that they had to take care of and getting signed. Jordan Staal, Jesper Fast, both goalies, which they did. They go out in free agency. They signed Dmitry Orlov and Michael Bunting. They've been we'll talk about this later. They've been trying to land Vladimir Tarasenko, trying to land Erik Karlsson, trying to land Tony DeAngelo. And also, again, we heard from Don Waddell on July 1, Jerry Johansson, Sebastian Aho's agent, he's a big-time NHL agent. He has a lot of other clients, some of which I'm sure were among the UFA, the guys who hit free agency on July 1. So he's probably been busy taking care of them. So this might have gotten, pushed to the back burner for both parties for a little bit. Yeah. But, this is the kind of thing too, this, you wait until now. Now you can announce this on a day in late July, in early August, and kind of the doldrums of the offseason. Create some excitement for your fans, give people something to talk about. And maybe they're waiting so that they can announce it on the same day that the Kansas City Chiefs extend Chris Jones, so that I can't focus on one or the other. That's a possibility too, but no, it's not. But yeah, no, I think, within the next couple weeks or so, we'll see this. It's a perfect, from a PR standpoint, I said waiting until now is perfect in the sense that it's going to give you a day for the Hurricanes to be pretty much the center of attention in the NHL world when a deal like that gets announced, and, a big news day for your fans.
Yeah. And, one thing, you mentioned, with, his agent having so many other clients, I think we mentioned this a while back, was the fact that he wasn't a UFA yet. Like, you had this entire offseason and all of the coming season to get this done. It wasn't one that necessarily had to get done right this second. So I do think, you're definitely correct. And it may have just gotten pushed to the back burner. The Hurricanes been really busy, and I'm sure, again, Aho's agent been really busy this offseason getting other deals done. But it is nice to hear that, hey, this thing could be coming out in the next week or so. And, then we don't have to worry about it for another however many years. And really excited to be able to talk about that more when it happens, because, locking him up, that's one thing that the Hurricanes need to do. And one thing, Don Waddell said in that article was that there are players that are hard to replace, and Sebastian Aho is one of them. And 100% agree with that. But as we said, there's other things that the Hurricanes mentioned in that article that the Hurricanes are looking to do, and we will continue to talk about that right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, it is baseball season, and you guys know we've talked about it many times how much we love baseball here on the show. Andrew being a big Royals fan, me being a Red Sox and Tigers fan. So if you're wanting to bet on your favorite team, whether it's one of ours or another one, take your first swing at betting on the MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right, just $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting on everything from the money line to the over under to who you think is going to hit the first home run. All that on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around. There's no better place to bet on the MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit fanduel.com/locked on to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com/locked on.
Now you should
Now,
probably bet against our teams rather than on them. Just to be clear, I would not advise anybody to go bet their hard-earned money on the Kansas City Royals doing anything positive.
yeah, same with the Tigers and Red Sox. I wouldn't either. But, hey, the Royals beat the freaking Tigers the other day, too. And
That's
I didn't
true.
hear any
Barely.
trash talk from you, but
Yeah.
this is not Locked On Royals. This is not Locked On Tigers. If you
Thank
want to go
God.
listen to those, go check out those shows. Those are great hosts that run those shows. But moving back to the Hurricanes, it was mentioned in that article that there is, other things that the Hurricanes are working on. And, one that we've talked about a lot this offseason is extensions for Teuvo Teravinen, Brett Pesce, and Brady Skjei. All of them are working on extensions because they're all UFAs as well next offseason, along with Sebastian Aho. But Don Waddell said that they are not close on any of those, which kind of sucks. I know for a while we thought that it looked like it was getting close for Brett Pesce, at least, getting him extended. So the fact that they aren't close is a bit worrisome. Again, like Aho, it's not one that has to get done today or anything like that. You still got plenty of time to get it done. But the fact that they aren't close at all on any of these, again, Pesce especially, because it was sounding like they were close, it's a little questionable. The fact that they aren't close on any of them. Again, the Hurricanes have been really busy. And you figure these guys, agents as well, have also been busy this offseason. But with Aho, they're close on that one. But none of these are close. And you figure you could at least be locking one of these guys up again. Pesce, you thought they were going to get one done a couple weeks ago, but turns out that was not the case. And we have talked about really all three of these guys potentially being parts of trades, whether it be to start the season or, a trade deadline move. And I could totally see that if, things continue progressing the way they are and it doesn't look like an extension is going to happen. I could totally see the Hurricanes moving on from these guys.
Yeah, I would not be surprised at all if at least two of these guys are not on the Hurricanes opening night roster. We've talked a lot about, there's been a lot of rumors about them looking potentially to trade Brett Pesce, getting some value back for him. Obviously, their pursuit of Erik Karlsson, if they were to land him, would require probably both Shea and Pesce being traded, to be honest. I think Teravinen is the one that it makes the most sense to trade for a lot of reasons. He's had some injuries. He's coming off a down year. I can't see them locking him up long term. Well, again, we'll talk about this in our last segment. But if you're looking to free up cap space to add a guy like Vladimir Tarasenko, add some more goal scoring, add a little bit of a different element to your lineup group, your forward group, I think moving out Teravinen to clear up both cap space and a spot in that top 9, which is pretty crowded right now with the addition of Michael Bunting and the anticipated return of Andrei Svechnikov, who, by the way, has been skating this week. So that's the past couple weeks, I think. So that's really great to see. The Hurricanes He should be on track to be back with them at the start of the regular season, I would think. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a trainer. I can't say that with certainty, but things look good. But yeah, I mean, so all that in mind, I think trading Teravinen makes sense. If you land Erik Karlsson, I think you end up trading Brett Pesce as part of making it work, both roster and cap wise. Here's my thing that I don't love about the Hurricanes' approach with this of wanting to like extend or trade Pesci and or Shea so that they don't walk for nothing next summer. I get it. You don't want to see that, but you have, even if they both walk next summer, you're going to have 3/4 of your top four already locked in with Jacob Slavin, Brent Burns, and Dmitry Orlov. You're in a cup window. So I would personally be okay with letting Shea and Pesci play out the last year of their deals and not making another move on defense if you don't land Erik Karlsson. If you can land Erik Karlsson, land Erik Karlsson. We've already talked about how incredible that could be. But say you don't. You go into next season with a defensive core of Jacob Slavin and Brent Burns, Dmitry Orlov and Brett Pesce, Brady Skjei and Jalen Chatfield. The Hurricanes could have a historically low shots and goals against average season with that defensive core. I think that could be so good. So that would personally be my approach. Now I get it. I get they don't, at least with one of Shea or Pesce, probably they want to either extend or trade them so they don't risk, both of them walking for nothing next offseason. But man, I think you've got the opportunity the Hurricanes have to go chase a Stanley Cup right now. I think that's a risk that I would be willing to take to ice that kind of a blue line this year, especially too, you've got a guy like Brady Skjei on the third pairing. You're pretty well guarded against an injury in your top four at that point too. So that would be the approach I would take, sans getting Erik Karlsson. Probably not the approach the Hurricanes are going to take for the reasons that we've laid out. So again, I really would not be surprised at all. Again, like I said, if at least two of Teuvo Teravinen and Brett Pesce, Brady Skjei are not with the Hurricanes on opening night this season.
Yeah, and you talk about the blue. Oh, well, really, any of these guys could fit here, but we'll focus on Shea and Pesce. Okay, you can't get Erik Karlsson. We'll talk more about him later on. But like you said, say he gets traded to Pittsburgh or whatever. Okay, that's not going to happen. All right, let's okay, that plan isn't going to work out. Okay, let's just focus on trying to get an extension done. Just because they don't land Carlson or whatever doesn't mean that they don't sign an extension either. Because like you said, you look at their defensive core, this could be historically good this year, just as it stands right now, as of 12:55 p.m. on July 22nd. If you threw this blue line out there, I mean, you're still good. Like, it's not like it's abysmal or anything like that. You're gonna have one of the top ones in the NHL just with what you have right now. So, yeah, I mean, again, like you said, if you can add Erik Karlsson, add Erik Karlsson. But if they can't, and they just like, okay, that's not going to happen. Let's just focus on these extensions. I'm fine with that too. Again, Teravinen, like you said, he does make the most sense to move with coming off the season he had. And then if they are able to get Carlson, trading one or both of Shea and Pesce, does make sense there. But yeah, it's one of those that I understand them wanting to get something out of it and not be like North Carolina sports have been in the past, whether it be Hurricanes, Panthers, Hornets, Bobcats, of letting a guy that you could get something from just walking, you get nothing. I understand that, but yeah, it's one of those, like, it won't be the end of the world if they don't get an extension done, but it also won't be the end of the world if they do,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and like we have been talking about some already, there are other trades and signings that are potentially in the works for the Hurricanes, and we will dive into those right after this quick break. All right, folks, we are back, and it is time to start talking about some other potential signs and trades that could be happening for the Hurricanes that were mentioned in this article. Again, there was a lot to digest here. And with the two or three biggest ones being one we've talked about already of Erik Karlsson, the Hurricanes trading for him. That has been rumored for a long time. And Andrew, you had mentioned some other teams being in the mix on that. Obviously, we know about Pittsburgh. Who are the other ones?
So yeah, it was Carlson mentioning to a Swedish outlet that he's spoken with the Hurricanes, Penguins, Kraken, and Maple Leafs. Again, any of these teams would need. It's kind of. I think the article mentioned the only two teams that could fit Erik Karlsson's current cap hit straight up without any retention or anything are the Chicago Blackhawks and Anaheim Ducks. Spoiler alert: Erik Karlsson has a no trade clause. He ain't going to the Chicago Blackhawks or Anaheim Ducks. So with all that in mind, this is it's not surprising that this hasn't gotten done yet because of Erik Karlsson having, he's coming off a great season, but he is 33. He's got 4 years left with an $11.5 million cap hit. This is a very complicated trade for whoever ends up making it, whether that be the Hurricanes, whether that be the Penguins, whether that be this is the first I've really heard a lot about the Kraken or Maple Leafs. I think the expectation all along has been it's kind of between the Hurricanes and Penguins, so I'll stick with those two. Both of them would need, probably to move some other money out some way, whether that's, the Hurricanes trading away a Brady Skjei or a Brett Pesce or a Teuvo Teravinen or two or all three, or the Penguins, I'm sure, have some guys I think, that they would need to move out. They would need the Sharks to figure out how much salary they're willing to retain. Of course, the more salary you ask the Sharks to retain, the more the Sharks are going to ask from you in terms of, this isn't like Brent Burns last summer. This isn't a pure salary dump. Carlson is coming off a 100-point season, winning the Norris. So the Sharks are probably asking for something legitimate for him in term, probably I'd imagine a first round pick is going to have to go the other way. Maybe a prospect, maybe a roster player. I'm not, the Sharks are in a rebuild. They don't just want to clear Carlson's salary off the books. They want this to be a trade that helps him with their rebuild. So you've got that. You've got the need for salary retention. You've got the salary retention, I'm sure, driving up the trade costs the more you're asking for. You've probably got the potential, like we've talked about before, like the Hurricanes did with, for example, Max Domi at the 2022 trade deadline, of getting a third team involved to take on some more of that salary. But that third team is probably going to require a fairly significant asset going that way as well, because, again, you're talking about asking them to retain extra salary for 4 years. So maybe, I mentioned the Ducks and Blackhawks as those rebuilding teams with a ton of cap space. Those would both be logical teams to take maybe, like a second or third round pick to take on that Carlson salary for 4 years, because the cap hit is probably not of whatever, extra 1, 2, 3 million is probably not going to hurt them in the near future. So there's a ton of moving parts with a trade like this. So I'm not at all surprised it hasn't been done yet. I wouldn't be at all surprised if it takes multiple weeks still for this to come to a conclusion. If Erik Karlsson is still with the San Jose Sharks at the start of training camp, you look at in the past, like I think it was 2019, going into that 2019-20 season, I think everybody knew the Hurricanes were going to trade Justin Falk going into the last year of his contract. But correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't actually trade him until like September. And then they went out in that September and signed Jake Gardiner. So, big moves can still be had right up until training camp, right into training camp, into the season. So this whole Erik Karlsson saga is one that I'm not going to be surprised if the ending is not in sight for us right now.
Yeah, there's history for that, because Yeah, you're right of that training camp because I remember talking to him. He almost ran over Brock McGinn that training camp. I remember that vividly. Everyone thought that was really funny. But it this is one I'm not going to be surprised if it goes till September. Heck, it's one that really wouldn't surprise me if he was on the Sharks opening night roster because of there being so many moving parts. But moving away, from that, did say in that article that the Hurricanes are still interested in Vladimir Tarasenko and Tony DeAngelo. And I know we were kind of surprised that the Hurricanes haven't acquired DeAngelo yet because at the time, Waddell had said that that trade was agreed on with Philly in principle, but yeah, it didn't happen when the date rolled around. I believe it was the 9th of July
Yeah.
was when they could have made that trade. Didn't make it, and now it's the 22nd of July. The Flyers just straight up released Tony DeAngelo, which in the Hurricanes, okay, maybe you can pay him less money now. But it did kind of feel like the Flyers were just tired of waiting. And that, I think, one thing that held that up was simply the Hurricanes' other moves that they were making and are still trying to make. And they're just like, oh, let's hold off on this right here. Let's, focus on Philly. I'm not going to talk to you right now. I'm going to talk to San Jose, and maybe that was, what happened there. I don't know. But the fact that, he's been released and has been released for what, like a week and a half, 2 weeks now, and still hasn't been picked up by the Hurricanes or let alone anyone else. It is a little odd there. Tarasenko, another guy that he's, you know, we thought it was going to happen a couple weeks ago, but then he got his new agent and everything just kind of reset. So you figure he's definitely looking for a big payday. And with that, like Carlson, money's got to get moved around if you're going to make that signing. So, yeah, it's interesting the fact that the Hurricanes are still in on all of these players come into July.
Yeah, I think at this point, Tony DeAngelo is probably a backup plan for the
Yeah.
Hurricanes because the main reason for acquiring him would be so he can quarterback your second power play unit. And if you get Erik Karlsson, that need is not there because Brent Burns quarterbacks one unit, Erik Karlsson quarterbacks the other. Dmitry Orlov can quarterback a power play. Brady Skjei, if he's still here, we saw him play a little bit on the power play last season. So the Hurricanes would have, really no need for Tony DeAngelo in that scenario. If someone else lands Erik Karlsson, I wouldn't be surprised if the Hurricanes signed Tony DeAngelo the same day. It's going to be for a lot less now than the $2.5 million they would have had to pay him if they traded for him. I think when they signed him in 2021, it was for 1 year, $1 million. I
Mm-hmm.
do not think his salary with the Hurricanes this year would exceed $1 million, just coming off the rough year he had in Philadelphia, getting, Philadelphia essentially paying him to go away.
Yeah.
He doesn't really have a lot of leverage right now. I think and I wouldn't be surprised too if he's waiting on the Hurricanes as his first choice because, he played pretty well here when he was here in 2021, 22. So I would not be surprised if he views this as the place that he wants to go to hopefully help get himself back on track, play for Rod Brind'amour again. I think he thought a lot of Rod Brind'amour and
Mm-hmm.
thought a lot of some of the other, there's still guys here like a Brady Skjei. The Hurricanes brought in Brendan Lemieux, who is a teammate of DeAngelo's with the Rangers. So I think the Hurricanes would be, especially again coming off that rough year, like a pretty comfortable place for him to go, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense, of
Yeah.
where he wants to go. So I would not be surprised if Tony DeAngelo remains unsigned until the Hurricanes figure out whether or not they are getting Erik Karlsson. Vladimir Tarasenko, it's just going to be, I think, a matter of how fast the Hurricanes can clear up the cap space they would need to sign him. if he finally gets tired of waiting. And it's interesting. So like saw similar to what just happened with DeAndre Hopkins in the NFL. Like the thought was, he had the offers from, like the Tennessee Titans, who he ended up signing with, who are not a very good team, but offered him a pretty good deal of money for a free agent who was still sitting there. The thought being, okay, well, he was waiting and waiting to see if the Chiefs or Bills could clear some cap space for him. And finally, like, he was like, I'm tired of waiting. I'm just going to take all this money that the Titans are offering me. Could be the same with Tarasenko. If he said, well, I'm tired of waiting on a team like the Hurricanes or Tampa or someone like that to, clear up enough cap space that I can go play for them. I'll just take, a bigger money offer from like Ottawa, who I think was interested in him. So I think it's just going to be a race between when the Hurricanes can make some moves to clear up some cap space, how long Tarasenko is willing to wait, if somebody else ups their offer to something that he can't refuse, or if he really truly is willing to wait on a contender like the Hurricanes, making him a somewhat reasonable offer so he can go in on a 1-year deal, produce, chase a cup, and maybe cash in next offseason. So that's kind of where I think that's at. I'd probably put it right now at like 70-30, 70 being that the Hurricanes do not end up with Vladimir Tarasenko. But the longer he remains unsigned, I think, the better those odds swing in the Hurricanes' favor. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting one to watch as well. And, one thing, I totally forgot about it is the fact that the Hurricanes also signed Brendan Lemieux this offseason. I know with him, we both were kind of like, he's just going to be the extra guy for the Hurricanes on the blue line this year. But, as of right now, they don't have to sign Tony DeAngelo. They could roll with Chatfield and Lemieux. They could do that.
Lemieux is a forward.
Oh, yeah, he is, isn't he? Oh, man, I'm a moron. But, why did I think he was a freaking defenseman? Oh, man, all over the place. Just totally scatterbrained. But, yeah, that's the thing. Well,
they still don't have to sign DeAngelo.
Yeah, they don't have to.
If they don't trade Pesci or Shea, they have 6 very good NHL defensemen. They don't
have to sign Tony DeAngelo. They don't need him. They're set.
You use the wrong formula, but you got the right answer.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, my story of me in math class. Wrong formula, but sometimes got the right answer. But yeah, they don't need Tony DeAngelo. They're set. So. If they can't get Erik Karlsson, they don't have to sign DeAngelo. Like they got, their blue line. It's all filled up. They don't need him, but evidently they still want him, and we'll just have to see where things go. All of this stuff, the Aho extension, the extensions for Teravinen, Shea, and Pesce, signings and trades that Hurricanes are potentially still going to make, all of that stuff. We can't rush it. I know we've joked in the past of, we're recording, they're going to make a move. But at the end of the day, they can't rush this stuff. We're just going to have to wait and see how it happens, when it happens, and what it is that actually happens. And we will, of course, talk about all of that stuff here on Locked On Hurricanes whenever it happens. So make sure you are following the show along on Twitter at LO_Hurricanes, myself on Twitter at Jared Ellis _96, and Andrew over on Twitter as well at ASchnitt53. And we will talk to you guys in the next episode. You guys have a great rest of your day, a great Saturday, and enjoy the nice weather, because it was nice when I was outside earlier. I don't know how it is now, though. But you guys enjoy your weekend, and we will talk to you guys in the next episode.